The lights in the auditorium dimmed, bathing us all in a sterile blue glow. I could feel the tension in the air, the kind that only comes when something important is about to be revealed, something you're not sure you want to know. The strategic warfare archives were not open to the public. Hell, they weren't even accessible to most officers. Only command track cadets like me, selected from dozens of planets, earned a chance to sit in this chamber, 50 meters below the lunar surface, surrounded by reinforced alloy and walls laced with quantum seal technology. We weren't here to watch war documentaries. This was the vault where the darkest truths of humanity's military past were stored, curated by the kind of people who didn't ask questions, because they already knew the answers. General Sorin walked to the center of the room. He wasn't a man so much as a symbol. His uniform clung to a body that had been patched together through decades of warfare, augmented limbs, neural implants along his neck, and a synthetic eye that clicked softly when it locked onto you. His voice rumbled through the stillness. You are here because you're the future. But before you can shape that future, you need to understand what's been buried to protect it. The screens behind him came to life, massive walls of light and data. A single video file appeared, labeled only with an encrypted string. No title. No operation name. Just a timestamp. Classified footage / protocol sigma black / playback authorized. The screen flickered. A jungle terrain appeared, viewed through a shaky drone camera. Low light. Thermal overlay. Trees swaying in the wind. Motion detection flaring now and then in the periphery. My pulse quickened. There was no war officially declared here, the general continued. This planet doesn't exist on any star map. You're about to witness a battle that never happened, fought by people we never trained, against an enemy we never met. The playback timer began, /midnight. The footage was quiet, too quiet. You could hear the drone hum faintly, but nothing else. No wind. No animal sounds. Just static and that faint electronic whine. The jungle looked alien, twisted vines, pulsing spores drifting through the air, some of them glowing faintly. We watched in silence, a room full of cadets holding our collective breath. Somewhere out there, something had gone wrong. And we were about to see what. Then I heard a voice from my left. A whisper. So soft it almost didn't register. Pause it at 007. I turned slightly. It was Varys. A quiet cadet from Europa's outer ring. He'd barely spoken since we arrived, always watching, always observing like he knew something the rest of US didn't. He wasn't even looking at me, just at the screen, like he'd been waiting for this exact moment. The timer hit /007. Something flickered in the corner of the footage. Pause it, I said instinctively, louder than I meant to. The technicians froze the video. Everyone leaned in. There, deep in the foliage, barely visible through the thermal haze, was a shape. Humanoid. Upright. Still. Zoom in. Right quadrant, Varys said, his voice suddenly calm. Almost too calm. The image magnified. The figure resolved slowly. Human. No armor. No helmet. Just standing there. Smiling. Gasps filled the room. Not fear. *recognition star. I couldn't say why, but it felt familiar. That's not part of the training sim, someone muttered. The general stared at the screen for a long moment, then turned toward Varys. You weren't supposed to know that was there, he said quietly. Varys sat back down. I shouldn't, he agreed. But I do. No one spoke. Not even the general. The room was frozen in that suspended moment, every eye locked on the screen and the figure within it. The playback timer still read /007, but that single frame might as well have lasted a lifetime. I studied the man on the screen, because yes, it was a man. Human, unmistakably so. Standing in a place no human was ever reported to be, wearing no visible armor, no environmental gear, not even carrying a weapon. And yet, he looked perfectly at ease. Varys didn't say another word. He simply stared, hands clasped on the table in front of him, as if he were waiting for someone to realize what he already knew. My thoughts spun. Who was he? Why was he there? How did Varys know to stop it at this exact moment? Questions piled up faster than I could process them. The general's voice finally broke the silence. "Resume playback." The technicians hesitated. I said resume playback. The screen jumped forward. The drone footage continued. At \008, the figure was gone. Vanished. No movement. No displacement of leaves. Nothing. Like he'd never been there at all. I looked around. The others wore the same expression I did, disbelief tinged with unease. A few tried to whisper, but their voices died before they left their throats. The silence in the room was too thick, too weighted with meaning. We'd all seen it. We all knew something was wrong. The video went on. At \019, the drone caught a burst of movement, blurs, heat signatures, weapons fire. Aliens we didn't recognize, not even from xeno-warfare briefings, engaging in a coordinated assault. But we barely paid attention. Our minds were stuck on those first 7 seconds. The general paused the playback again, this time at \042. "That is the first known encounter with the Trith Ascendancy," he said. "They don't speak. They don't negotiate. They consume." His cybernetic eye flicked to Varys. "And they retreated from this battle. Without explanation." I turned to Varys. "How did you know?" I whispered. He didn't look at me. "I've seen it before." "In another classified video?" "No," he said. "In my dreams." My stomach turned cold. The general approached us slowly. "Cadet Varys," he said, "you are not authorized to access Black Sigma content. No known footage of this battle has ever been released." Varys looked up. "And yet I knew where to pause it." The general didn't argue. He didn't threaten. He simply nodded to the techs. "Cut the feed. Secure the footage. Clear the room." Protests erupted from other cadets, but the general's expression shut them down immediately. 2 guards entered silently. Everyone stood. Everyone except me and Varys. The general gestured to us. "You two stay." The doors closed behind the last cadet. The room was silent again, the screen now dark. "Who told you?" the general asked Varys. "No one," he answered. "But I think I was meant to see it." "Why?" I asked. Varys finally looked at me. His eyes were wide, but steady. "Because that man isn't just a soldier. He's a message." "What kind of message?" Varys took a breath. "The kind that doesn't speak in words. He was there to be seen. Not to fight. Not to win. Just to exist in the moment that mattered." I didn't understand. Not yet. But I could feel something shifting. Like we had just peeled back the first layer of something ancient and deliberate. The general sat heavily at the table, suddenly looking older than any augmentation could fix. "What you saw was classified not because of what it showed, but because of what it means." "And what does it mean?" I asked. He looked at both of us, grim. "It means the galaxy isn't afraid of our weapons. It's afraid of us." They debriefed us separately, one at a time, in cold, sterile rooms that smelled faintly of ozone and metal. I sat under harsh lights for 6 hours while an AI-led triage officer asked the same questions a dozen different ways. "What did you see? What made you request the video to pause? Did anyone instruct you?" They were fishing, for a lie, maybe, or a gap they could use to explain it all away. But I gave them nothing except the truth. I didn't know who the man was. I didn't know why Varys knew. But I saw what I saw. And it didn't make sense. When they finally let me go, I expected to find Varys gone, transferred, disappeared, but he was waiting outside my quarters, sitting on the floor, arms resting on his knees like he hadn't moved since they released him. His expression was calm, too calm for someone who had just cracked open a military secret like an egg. "You ready to ask me now?" he said. "Ask what?" "What you've been thinking since you saw him. Since you saw me react." I didn't hesitate. "Who the hell was that man?" Varys didn't blink. "I don't know." That made me pause. "But I've seen him before," he continued. "Not in a file. Not in a report. In my dreams. Since I was a kid." "That makes no sense." Neither does a human standing unarmored on a quarantined alien world in footage scrubbed from history. He had a point. Over the next few days, I couldn't focus on training. I couldn't sleep. Every time I closed my eyes, I saw that frozen frame, 007. The man's expression burned into my memory. He hadn't been afraid. Not even curious. He'd looked directly into the drone camera, straight into the lens, like he knew we'd be watching someday. I started digging. Carefully. The Academy's archive was enormous, segmented across dozens of AI firewalls, most of them way above my clearance. But I knew how to ask the system questions without tripping alerts, enough to catch fragments that were supposed to be deleted. Not full reports. Just echoes. Whispers left behind in backup sectors and internal chat logs from long-dead commanders. That's when I found the first real anomaly. A line buried in a decommissioned fleet command memo. Initiating Blackstar Protocol. Echo class presence confirmed. Advise immediate obfuscation. Public record must reflect solar flare event. I traced the node further. The file had been scrubbed by someone with override clearance Sigma 1. That wasn't a level, it was a myth. A joke among cadets for God-tier authority. I brought it to Varys the next night. We huddled in the back of the flight sim hangar, pretending to run diagnostics. "You ever hear of Blackstar Protocol?" I asked. He stiffened. "Yeah," he said softly. "It's the name they gave to missions that weren't supposed to exist. Places where things happened that broke the rules. Our rules, their rules, reality's rules." "You're telling me this is paranormal?" "No," he said, shaking his head. "It's worse. It's human." That stopped me. He leaned in, voice barely a whisper. "The galaxy has seen our diplomacy, our alliances, our wars. But they haven't seen our shadow. The side of us we buried. The part that doesn't make sense even to us. That man in the jungle, he's not a legend. He's a warning." "A warning to who?" Varys looked up at the stars through the hangar window. "To anyone watching. Anyone thinking we're predictable. That we play by the same rules." I didn't know whether to believe him. But something deep inside me, the same instinct that made me freeze the footage, told me this wasn't over. It was just the first breadcrumb. And the trail was leading somewhere no one wanted to follow. It started with the phrase, Echo Class Anomaly. It kept popping up in places it shouldn't: decommissioned drone logs, corrupted training datasets, even old mission reports redacted beyond usefulness. Most cadets would have stopped after the first firewall. But I couldn't. Not after what I'd seen. Not with Varys acting like a man holding back a flood. Whatever we'd uncovered wasn't just a fluke. It was deliberate. Hidden in plain sight. We'd meet in shadows, abandoned training bays, unused comms relays, back ends of the Academy server tree. Every night, I brought Varys what I found. Every night, he stared at the fragments like they were puzzle pieces he recognized but couldn't quite place. Then one night, I uncovered something that changed everything. A name. Project Enoch. No context, just a heavily corrupted NAV file. No coordinates. No ship logs. But cross-referencing the temporal markers from the system's decay signature gave us a timestamp that matched exactly with the jungle footage, the 007 mark. That couldn't be coincidence. Varys paled when I showed him. "I've heard that name before," he said. "My father was in the Colonial Guard. He used to whisper it in his sleep. Enoch. Over and over." "Is that what he called the man in the footage?" "No," Varys whispered. "That's what he called the silence that followed. It was then I started to see the pattern." The data we pulled from alien archives, mostly Trith and Yon records obtained through shadow diplomacy, told a story completely absent from human military history. In those documents, humanity wasn't just referred to as a species. We were labeled with cautionary terms: disruption class, cognitive threat vector, echo entities in carbon form. But one translation hit me like a punch to the chest. The race that brings consequences. These weren't tactical reports. They were warnings. Ritualized documentation. Psychological shields meant to keep soldiers from breaking down. Aliens who encountered certain human strike units never returned the same. Some never returned at all. We thought we'd won those wars with tech, with strategy. But they thought we'd won through something else. Fear. Humanity, Varys said one night as we sat by the server glow, doesn't just kill its enemies. It reshapes them. Makes them afraid of their own rules. That's what the Black Star protocols are. I didn't understand. Black Star units don't go in to fight. They go in to be seen. They do things that can't be explained. Things that force our enemies to ask themselves the worst question. What if this isn't all they can do? Psychological warfare, I said. No, he replied, shaking his head. Something deeper. Mythological warfare. We plant ghosts. Haunt their belief systems. We don't just break their armies. We break what they believe is possible. And suddenly the man at 007 made sense. He didn't have to shoot. Or speak. Or move. His presence was enough. A walking contradiction, calmly standing in a place he couldn't possibly be. Wearing nothing. Holding nothing. Yet controlling everything that happened afterward. We'd been fighting on two fronts. The one the public knew, the battles, the fleets, the treaties. And another front entirely. The one where we became legends and nightmares. The war behind the war. Varys looked me dead in the eye. They never feared our weapons. They feared that one day, they'd see us where we shouldn't be. Smiling. Like he did. And in that moment, I realized something terrifying. We were still smiling. I was never the same after that. None of it felt real anymore. Classes, drills, even the war games we were forced to run like clockwork. Everything seemed like a distraction now, a sanitized performance. Because once you realize there's a deeper war beneath the surface, one not even your instructors will speak of, the rest of it feels like theater. But I wasn't content to just know. I needed proof. Tangible, undeniable records that this mythological warfare, as Varys called it, wasn't just rumor or psychological operations. That it was real. So we dug deeper, too deep, maybe. One night, I broke into the Xenointel archives using an encryption seed Varys had copied from a commander's neural implant during a handshake. The seed worked for exactly 3 minutes and 12 seconds before the system began to self-lock. But it was enough. I pulled 3 files. Each from different species. Each describing the same event. Not in the same place. Not in the same time frame. But the same pattern. A battle begins. Superior alien forces outnumbering a scattered human presence. Tactical advantage on their side. Then, something happens. Visual anomalies. Units reporting hallucinations. Communications becoming corrupted. Emotional breakdowns. Madness. Panic. Retreat. And in the aftermath, every alien survivor reports seeing one thing before it all fell apart. A human. Alone. Unarmed. Smiling. Some said he was on fire but didn't burn. Others claimed he spoke in their language without moving his mouth. A few went mad just trying to describe him. But always the same face. The same presence. The same impossible calm. The files were tagged with one common phrase in every alien language, awkwardly translated by the system. The man who arrives at 0. Not 007. 0. Ground zero. Impact frame. The moment everything changes. And I realized, we'd been looking at it wrong. That video wasn't showing us the beginning of something. It was showing us the end. I showed the files to Varys in the lower access hall beneath the West Wing dormitories. He stared for a long time, silent. "This is bigger than the protocol," he finally said. "Bigger than Black Star. It's the war they don't admit." "You mean a cover-up?" "No," he said. "I mean an entirely separate war. One they're fighting without fleets or flags. One where the goal isn't to destroy civilizations." He looked at me, voice low. "It's to make them afraid to fight us at all." We were interrupted mid-sentence. A flash of light. A pulse of static that made the implants in my wrist burn like acid. And then, they were there. 3 of them. No sound. No announcement. Just stepped out of nowhere like reality had forgotten to close the door behind them. Unmarked uniforms. No ranks. No names. Their faces blurred slightly at the edges, like my brain couldn't hold on to the details. One of them spoke. "You weren't supposed to find that." Varys stepped in front of me. "But we did." The one in the center nodded. Not angry. Not surprised. Just inevitable. "Then it's time." "For what?" I asked. "To stop watching," the figure said, "and start becoming." Before I could ask what that meant, everything around me went black. Not unconsciousness, but absence. Like we'd never been in that hallway to begin with. And when I opened my eyes, we were somewhere else. A place without walls, without time. They were going to show us the real war. And maybe turn us into the next frame of it. I don't know where they took us. There were no stars, no gravity, no sound. Only the feeling of movement without motion, like we were slipping between the cracks of space rather than traveling through it. When sensation returned, we were standing in a room that wasn't a room. Smooth black surfaces extended infinitely in all directions, but wherever I looked, my focus was drawn inward, to a central presence I couldn't see, only feel. A voice, calm, ageless, echoed in my mind rather than my ears. "Welcome to the Legacy Protocol." Varys and I stood side by side. He didn't look confused. Just solemn. Resigned. This wasn't training. This wasn't initiation. This was inheritance. A panel unfolded from the dark, revealing images, not screens, not projections. Memories. But not ours. They floated around us like ghosts. One showed a fleet of Trith warships halting mid-invasion. Not because of a counterattack. Because every one of their psychics began convulsing, whispering the same name in languages they shouldn't have known, human. Another showed a Yuln planetary priesthood setting fire to their own archives, deleting every image of a single human soldier who had appeared for less than 5 minutes in a recon feed, because those 5 minutes had been enough to collapse their doctrine of invulnerability. A third memory displayed a dark moon, orbiting a system with no strategic value. Inside, a squad of elite alien assassins encountered a lone human operative. No combat. No threats. Just a question whispered into the air. "Have you ever wondered why we're always smiling?" None of the assassins ever spoke again. "These aren't myths," the voice said. "They are deployments." My mouth was dry. Why? To remind the galaxy that humans are not a force to be measured. We are a force to be imagined. That's when I understood. This wasn't about war. Not in the traditional sense. The Legacy Protocol wasn't about fighting battles. It was about controlling belief. In a universe full of advanced species, each guided by rigid doctrines and predictable strategies, humanity did something no one expected. We became the unknown. We let them think we were erratic, irrational, dangerous. And when that wasn't enough, we started planting questions. The smiling man in the footage? He wasn't a one-time event. He was a symbol, deliberately replicated, different people in different places, trained not to kill, but to haunt. To leave witnesses. To warp perception. Each encounter a psychological virus, destabilizing confidence, introducing paranoia into enemy command structures. We called them echo agents. "You will become one," the voice said. "Both of you." Varys didn't flinch. "I've always known." I looked at him, stunned. "How?" "My father was one," he said. "They tried to wipe it from his mind. Didn't work." I stepped back. "Wait, what if I don't want this?" "You were chosen the moment you asked to pause the footage," the voice said. "Not because of what you saw, but because you recognized it." "I'm not like him," I argued. "I'm just a cadet." "No," the voice said. "You're a mirror. And every mirror, when angled correctly, becomes a doorway." Suddenly, I saw it all. The man at 007, the files, the whispers in alien reports. They weren't warnings about what we do. They were warnings about what we let them believe we can do. The legacy wasn't built on strength. It was built on fear. Strategic, cultivated, weaponized fear. And I was now part of it. Years passed, or maybe it was only weeks. Time lost its grip after the induction. Once you become part of the Legacy Protocol, you stop measuring life in days or deployments. You start thinking in frames. In moments. In impressions. What matters isn't the kill count or the medals. What matters is the story you leave behind, the story your enemies tell about you, whether or not it's true. We didn't get uniforms. We didn't get ranks. We got coordinates, instructions, sometimes a disguise. And always the same mission: be seen and be impossible. I was sent to a mining colony in the Glassen Rift, where a rebellion funded by a Trith syndicate had turned the region into a proxy war zone. The rebels were winning. Supply lines had collapsed. Local leadership had fled. No one expected Earth to intervene. Not here. Not this small, this insignificant. I arrived alone. No weapons. No comms. Just walked straight into the middle of their forward operating base like I had every right to be there. I didn't threaten. Didn't negotiate. Just stood there, hands behind my back, and smiled at every camera I knew they had watching. 4 hours later, their entire chain of command surrendered. Not to me. To no one. They left their weapons behind and fled the colony entirely, broadcasting panicked warnings about a Class Echo human being on the ground. I never fired a shot. Later, I found a report leaked through Trith war channels. It described me as a reality-dissonant asset, capable of manipulating probability fields. The report claimed I'd phased through walls, vanished and reappeared, even spoken in extinct dialects of their dead gods. None of it was true, but they believed it, and that was enough. I became what they feared most, not just a soldier, but a breach in the logic of the galaxy. A living inconsistency. Sometimes I'd return to the shadows between deployments, and sometimes, rarely, they let us watch. We'd sit in dark chambers and observe the new batch of cadets in the same auditorium I once sat in. General Soren, still there, still delivering the same speech. The screen would flicker. The video would play. Midnight. The jungle. The drone footage. The ambient hum. And I'd wait, holding my breath, for the moment that changed everything. 007. Pause it, someone always whispered. Always. One cadet. One voice. As if fate tapped a shoulder every cycle, whispering, now it's your turn. And this time I was there. In the frame. Standing unarmored, calm, alone, just like he had been for me. The new cadets would lean in, confused, frightened, curious, wondering what they were seeing, wondering why it felt so real. That's how the legacy passed on. Not through orders, but through moments, through whispers in the dark and unspoken understanding. We weren't ghosts. We weren't gods. We were the reflection of everything the galaxy refused to understand about us, and that made us powerful beyond comprehension. When the War Council gathered years later to discuss terms of peace with the Trith Ascendancy, the aliens arrived with offerings. Not weapons. Not threats. Stories. Transcripts of dreams. Sketches of smiling humans standing where none should be. Desperate questions about how many of us existed. We gave them no answers. Because the answer was irrelevant. All that mattered was that they believed. And that belief, that sliver of fear embedded in their culture, meant humanity would never need to fire first again. The war was over. And we had won it, not by force, but by letting them pause at 007.